UrzaMaster is going to run it out past the 40 into Giants territory. He is going to go all the way. Touchdown, Chicago.
Trying to find somebody open and throws an interception. And it's Charles Woodson's 55th of his career.
Dives for the touchdown, San Francisco.
I want to play desperately, and I'm going to try to drive everyone nuts till they give me a shot.
Favre threw an almost impossible 336 career interceptions.
See that?
Yeah. We have here the Brett Favre interceptions calendar.
It's the lovable kicking bear doll. And guess what? It comes with its own goalpost. Isn't that neat?
Double doink.
No accounts or representations of the game are allowed without NFL consent. But we are back, cutting the cheese, poking the bear, roasting the Niner, and we are famously without bear tonight. No Lord Uther on this broadcast here on our 11th edition, Cut the Cheese, Poke the Bear. I am UrzaMaster. Joining me is Gold Rush, way out on the West Coast. Gold Rush, let's kick it off here tonight. Disappointing loss at home for the 49ers. Okay. What went wrong? Did you not wear your shirt? Did you forget to change your socks to your special socks?
All right. I deserve all the smoke coming my way as a Super Niners fan. So, thanks to a DirecTV Disney dispute, I was unable to watch the opening week Niners national broadcast versus the Jets, a 32-19 victory. But they did about what we were thinking this year's Niners squad would do. In week 2, they went to Minnesota, which they haven't won in Minnesota apparently since I was in college. And don't look that up, friends. It's been a while. And they played down to expectations there and came up short. And then it's these 2 division games, because in between there they beat up on the hapless Patriots, and I think a lot of teams are going to beat up on the hapless Patriots this year, so I'm not taking anything from that game. But to the Rams on the road and to Arizona yesterday in a very hot, unseasonably warm October day in the Bay Area, but we don't make weather excuses here. They took 10 and 14-point leads into the, late into the game, into the fourth quarter. And then it's just, it's kind of hard to understand, because the things that they were doing in the first 3 quarters and even some of the breaks they were getting, yesterday's game against the Cardinals, they had a blocked field goal for a 61-yard return for a touchdown. If you were watching the game, you saw Brock Purdy completing big passes to Ayuk and Kittle. You saw Jordan Mason again doing what Jordan Mason's been doing in the absence of Christian McCaffrey. Aside from an opening Kyler Murray scramble for 60 yards and a touchdown that kicked the game off, the Cardinals took an early 7-0 lead. The 49ers were in control of that game. They simply were. And I was looking up the defensive stats, and they only have them through week 4 right now, so it doesn't count yesterday's game, but everything up till yesterday's game. Overall, the Niners are 9th in the NFL in defense. That's not the best, but it's also in the top 10, and for what it's worth, there it is. They're 6th in the NFL this season so far against the run, which, again, we've come to expect. But they're 15th or so against the pass. So that's obviously something you would have to, maybe work on a little if you wanted to ratchet it up. But here's where yesterday's game and the Rams defeat, come from ahead to lose. Here's where it got really troubling for this Niners fan. On 3rd down, getting the team to punt or making the stops that you need to, whether it's 3rd and 1 or 3rd and 23, the Niners are like 18th in the league, which is not in the top even half of the percentiles. So they're not getting guys off the field, and drives are sustaining, which is probably leading to points. And in red zone is like, red zone is like 26. And there's only like 6 teams that are worse in the NFL than the red zone.
That's pretty rough.
That is rough. And that's, I mean, again, we always say statistics will tell you whatever they want to tell you. What they're telling me is that late in the game yesterday, the Cardinals, James Conner had run for like 16 yards in the first half. And then they made adjustments to the Niners, rushes and their blocking schemes and so forth. And in the second half, he had 77 yards, including sustaining drives that led to points. The Cardinals only scored 11 points in the second half yesterday. 11. The Niners scored 0 in 2 quarters after being up 23-10 at the half, and they lost the game 24-23. In a day when the division, thanks to those Green Bay Packers, go Pack go, looked very comfortable. It looked like SoFi Midwest in terms of just being able to, turn the ball, the takeaways. I believe they lead the league in takeaways this season so far. I mean, they are ball hawking, and they seemingly do whatever they wanted to against the Rams, which we, again, coughed up a late lead and lost 27-24. So you had the Rams losing. You had Seattle looking all out of sorts at home against the New York Football Giants, which was bizarre.
Bananas. I mean, that was the weirdest outcome of the whole day, I think.
And New York, to their credit, they played a very un-New York Giants-like game. Like, they were effective on third down. They were running the ball. They were completing the deep out up the sideline for 36 yards. They were playing Seattle's game in many ways. And then on defense, they were harassing Geno Smith, and the running game wasn't getting going. So, again, for a week, any given Sunday, the Giants looked, pretty hot. I'm not pushing the panic button in Niner land by any means. It's 2-3. Everyone knows about the injuries, no excuses. I'm concerned about the metrics on the defensive side right now. What I think I'm seeing is a bunch of very talented players, very talented, at cornerback, at linebacker, on the front four. But what I'm not seeing is that cohesiveness yet as a unit. I don't see a lot of new faces that have, yes, obviously there have been some changes, but there's enough veterans on that team from last year and the year before and all that. So this kind of stuff needs to get ironed out. But Green Bay right now, you'd have to say they are one of the top NFC teams without even with a couple of losses, they look pretty sharp. They look like when they've got their heads right, they can pretty much dominate on both sides of the ball. The Vikings clearly come down.
Yeah.
The Commanders.
The Commanders? Yeah, I was just about to say. What's weird is that you look at the NFC and it's like all of a sudden the Commanders are relevant. Which who expected that?
No,
I certainly didn't. I would have never guessed in 1,000 years that all of a sudden the Commanders were going to snap out of it and be a decent team, and they're not just decent, they're good. Right. They're a good team this year.
And they're playing a soft schedule. Everyone's going to beat Cleveland this year. I get it.
Yeah.
But and they may come down to earth in week 6. They do go on the road to Baltimore, and Baltimore's looking a little feisty now after whatever. But nevertheless, they are ahead of schedule as far as what we probably thought they were going to be. If the Commanders finish this season at 9-8 or so forth, they would actually probably right now, based on how they're playing, consider that a disappointment. Whereas at the beginning of the season, if you said Commanders 9-8, you'd be like, oh my God, I'm going to Bally's and making a bet. I'm putting money down on this team. So, but what I was most impressed about with the Packers, besides the fact that playing the Rams meant that I couldn't watch the 49ers, I had to watch the red zone clips and on my computer. Like I said, Jordan Love now, second full year in the offense, obviously, took a lot in through training camp and so forth, was, feeling his oats, doing that in the first part of the season, but go from the second half of last season through the postseason and now up to now. And again, you'd think the guy's been playing 5 or 6 years and he looks as comfortable as Favre did,
Yeah. It's bizarre because he's not that much more than a rookie quarterback. And I think folks forget, when you sit on a bench and you never start a game, behind Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, you're learning a lot, but you're still new to the field. You know, you're still learning to feel those in-game hits and master your in-game craft. The preseason is it's just not really real football. So what exposure you get is that, and training camp and practice and random scrimmages here and there. So it's impressive to see what he did last year. It's impressive what he started the year doing. I think the loss to Minnesota was the tough one for me because we roared back and nearly won that game. And a 5-0 Vikings team is not something I expected, but they looked beatable in every single game they've played.
Yes.
The biggest thing with that team, and you saw it against the Jets this weekend, and Aaron Rodgers having a bad game, is if you're not on your game, they'll exploit you. They have a good enough defense. Right. I'm not trying to take anything away. They played well. Like, they're playing like mid-season, late-season form early on. The thing that is going to hit them, and this is why Vikings fans, temper yourselves out there, but this is why I'm not worried about the Vikings even winning the North at this point. It's not a given because they're playing in late-season shape when there's still injuries. There's still a lot of football left to play before we're not even in November yet. We barely started October, so
Agreed.
They're going to start losing guys. And the thing is, it's inevitable. It happens to every team every year, sometimes worse than others, sometimes, better than others, but it does. You lose a guy or a couple of key guys, and you have to have the next man up mentality that the Vikings have always struggled with. And typically it's the linemen.
Right.
So I look at those games where teams have figured them out. Packers figured them out in the second half. Like, we were, a baby's breath away from winning that game, and very nearly did. It was just, again, you had an injured Jordan Love who really should have sat out another week, but he was itching to get back. It's at home. It's the Vikings. I get it.
What are you going to do?
And you gotta rip the Band-Aid off sometime, right? Well, this week, I think you saw a bit of the overhang from that. Is like, now he's back healthy. I would say he's back to 100% probably, or close to it. But mentally, he's still basically, just out of preseason. He's what, a game or two deep now. Malik did an amazing 2 wins in a row for us, but Jordan Love needs that time to adjust. He needs that time to settle himself down, and that's where you get early, in the game, or partway through the second quarter, he throws up a bone-headed 4-yard interception for a touchdown, first pick 6 of his career. And give him some credit. Anybody could have made that mistake. I'm not faulting him for that. It's not a rookie mistake. It's just, ball control and ball security is one of those things that when you're not firing on all game cylinders, if you've not been playing 6, 7, 8 games in a row, you're not quite ready yet. Now, some teams get lucky and they go 8-0. But how many years has it been now that we've seen those teams that win, and get to December and lose out, or lose their last 6 games and miss the playoffs? So I'm okay with a couple of losses. Every team in the NFC North right now is above 500. It's the only division in the league where everybody's above 500, which is amazing. But I look at what they did in the second half, especially with Tucker Kraft.
He was good.
That third quarter was inspired football. The problem is that you still had some guys who were dropping passes, and then it's not all on the receivers. Some of the balls were maybe a little underthrown, or not quite the perfect placement, and there was a little bit of back and forth on whose fault it might have been, but it's execution on both parties most of the time. And then you've got, one of your top receivers who's upset with the team, so he's suspended for the game and probably going to be traded, I'm guessing, or, they're going to have a heart-to-heart.
For Devontae Adams? No, just kidding.
I'm not against it. I know there are certain folks out there who think we don't need him. He's over the hill. He's washed up. He's, too much a diva. You don't want that. We don't have the cap space. All those arguments. One, in this point in the year, if we get him on a trade, the cap really doesn't matter because we're going to just sign him for the rest of the year, and they're going to get paid by the team that signed him for the year. So you're going to probably get him on a bargain deal. I mean, even if you give him good money, which he's going to want to get out of Oakland, you're still going to get him for way less than you probably would if you got him in the offseason. So it wouldn't be a bad move. I'm more concerned about what we'd have to give up in return. We're not going to get an even swap. We're going to have to give up some picks, probably at least 2 decent picks. Maybe not a first. I don't think he's worth a first.
No.
But probably at least a second, and a receiver for this year, which is a lot. It's a lot of trade value for an older receiver. I don't know that he wants to come back to Green Bay. I don't think he's against it. I don't think he hates the team or anything like that. I just think he wants to go to a very likely Super Bowl team. And I don't know, at least in his eyes, that the Packers have that capability. And it's not like, I'm not disagreeing with that judgment. Are they a Super Bowl team? I'd love to think so as a fan. I don't think I've seen it yet,
Right.
But I also think that if you go with the teams that are winningest right now, you're probably making a mistake. If you go to the Vikings, they're the Vikings. Right. I mean, let's be real. Right. They choke. They are going to do it again. It's a Minnesota sports team. I'm sure Minnesota fans don't want to agree, but you can write it in the comments. You don't want to agree, but you know I'm right. And again, no hate to Minnesota. They're playing inspired football, and definitely getting way more out of Sam Darnold than anybody ever thought anybody would get. But what I think is more intriguing is the defensive work, which has been, over the past few years, very up and down. We've had some good defenses. We've had some really bad ones. We've had very mixed bags. This year, we're solid. We're not a top 10 defense, I don't think, but we're close. And we're probably in the top 10, but I personally think we're a little outside because we need to tighten a few things up. I'm still a back to the basics dude. Tackling. Seems like everybody's trying to do these fingertip tackles, which honestly don't make sense to me. Somebody out there knows more about the game than I do. Drop us a comment. Let me know why people tackle with their hands like this, like they're going to stop a 300-pound back. I just don't think it's going to happen. And who knows? There's probably technique, or they don't want to hurt people or something. Nobody tackles like Chuck Cecil anymore, or even Atari Bigby. But I think to myself, I look at some of the tackles they're attempting, especially around the line of scrimmage, when they could get some of these guys blown up in the backfield, and they just sort of they tackle them like right here with their arm,
On the forearm,
and they're kind of looping, but it's like they're barely getting a grip because they're hitting here, which if you do that, you can feel your arm sort of lose strength and it wants to loosen up. So if you're tackling like that, how are you going to rope this dude down? But that being said, I do think they're playing really good football. I'd love to see them do a little bit better, but the Rams are a really good team. I think they're underrated, but there's a lot of other teams in the league right now that are just as good, if not better, that we're going to end up playing in our schedule. And we can't really sleep on next week either, because you look at week 6. The Bears are playing the Jags. Like it or not, the Bears are probably going to win that game. They're at home. 49ers are at the Seahawks. It's a big rivalry game. It's going to be a great game to watch Thursday. I can't wait.
Yes.
And then we've got the Cardinals in Lambeau. The Cardinals, they are not a bad team. They are not the Cardinals of old that we used to just, kind of toss to the side with the trash. That's going to be a tough game. Kyler Murray's not the best quarterback, but he's a good quarterback, and he's mobile. And historically, the Packers have not played well against mobile quarterbacks. If we can prove ourselves 2 weeks in a row, 49ers and Cardinals, I think we're set up pretty well moving forward. But we've still got the Lions are above 500. I mean, even the Bears are above 500. We'll probably beat the Vikings in their house at the end of the season. That's usually how it goes. I almost would guarantee we're going to split that matchup. Unless it's a meaningless game for either team, in which case it's a trap and who knows how it's going to go. But, this is the time where, we're just getting into October. We're going to start hitting bye weeks in a couple of weeks. These are the games, I think we're past that warm-up phase. We should be real settled in with football. It's why early season injuries kind of suck. Even if it's 2-3 weeks, they suck because now you're having to restart your season, and you should be getting into mid-season form, heading into a bye week, looking to have a great end of the year run. So I'm loath to admit, but they're still playing early season football, which gives me hope. And hope is dangerous as a Packer fan or as a football fan. Because you're like, hey, we've got everybody healthy, or most of our guys are healthy, and we're due to get some of those other guys back, like Jair Alexander and others who could make a splash.
I think
we still need to play good football right now.
Yes, I agree with all of that. I think there are very few teams still in the league. I mean, the Niners are 2-3, and you can call that a disappointment, and I will. It's thus far. But do they have the ability to snap back, starting with a quick turnaround to a division rival against a team that hates us, the Seahawks? You bet. There are very few teams in the league right now that seemingly have no hope. And that is to say, yeah, they might win a game here or there, but overall the season looks already like it's just going to be a march to December. I mean, I can't see fans in Indianapolis or Tennessee right now really, truly engaged. Yes, they may play again. They might beat a team that's not prepared for them, or they beat the Jets, or they beat Denver, or they beat Las Vegas. So, I mean, those two teams I think are kind of I think Carolina thought by bringing in Dalton that they would that might have been the spark, but they've quickly come back to just being a bad Carolina team. I think Cincinnati's frustrating for fans, because Cincinnati could be like the Packers. They've got the talent and the players to be at that level, playoff level. But at 1-4 right now, they're not playing like it. I mean, they just aren't. And, they're in a potentially a deeper hole than any of the three teams we have there that we follow. I must note, though, that we still, through 5 weeks, the Niners, the Packers, and the Bears have not all won or all lost in the same week. So we have not had any three of us commiserating in grief.
It's bound to happen, right?
No, I mean, the numbers bear this out, but I'm still waiting for that, week where we can all be celebratory and happy and all that. I was going to bring up some game day superstitions, but I'm thinking about it now, and I really want to wait, I think, for our favorite Ditka disciple, because if anyone, just based on how he dresses for these episodes, has got pre-game, post-game, mid-game superstitions, it's that guy. So I definitely want to hear what his features. So we'll make sure we hit that, friends. You don't want to miss that episode of our NFL cutting cheese, poking bears, roasting Niners, when we get into our personal game day superstitions and game week superstitions and all that. And it's silly. We're grown men. Some of us are past the age of reason, and yet we still foolishly believe all these things. Yes, you hit upon it. You've got Arizona. The Bears will be in London, which Jacksonville, it's like a second home for them. Again,
yeah.
I think the Bears. I think our dear friend Lord Uther, said he was afraid to hope. And every time you pull out a win in this league, because wins aren't easy to come by, I don't care who you're playing, you do feel that. You feel that momentum. And what the Bears needed to do is not think Super Bowl and not think NFC title game, but just develop a winning culture and so forth. Even if it means stealing games that you thought you had lost or games you would have lost in prior seasons. So the more of those they can bank and the more of those they can feel confident. I mean, beating Jacksonville and London this weekend, maybe that doesn't shift the balance of power anywhere in the league. But it's going to be good for the Bears to do, rough travel, get there, find a way to come out on top, even if it's 9-6, all field goals. Just find a way to get the W so you can, stay in the standings and get your fan base excited. But the game of the week, WEEK, has got to be the Lions at Dallas. Dallas, who held on for a game against Pittsburgh last night on Sunday Night Football. Detroit, who is either going to continue on their march, we're going to get back and unfinished business and all that, or they're going to hit some of the same problems that the Niners have, saying not being ready, for the spotlight, if you will. I mean, it's a test game, right? I mean, I don't know that they're going to go into Big D and obliterate them. It'll probably be a pretty close game if Dallas is there, but Dallas has shown it capable of completely missing the boat. So you want to talk about beating that?
As Dallas is wont to do.
Right. I mean, so that to me is
it's a marquee matchup.
Yeah. That's one of my favorites. I think the Commanders, we like them early. They're playing that schedule. But again, at Baltimore this weekend, you can't even call it a rivalry despite their natural geographic proximity at this point. But again, a respectable showing that will boost confidence. And then the Cincinnati, we talked about them, 1-4. Joe Burrow kind of calling out the team in his post-game comment saying we're not a championship team, at this point. They're at those Giants, and if the Giants who showed up yesterday in Seattle played that well at home, I mean, again, that's a 60-40 beat the Bengals. I mean, you could, I think in previous seasons say, Joe Burrow goes in there, Jamar Chase, the defense, no problem. But Daniel Jones and that team, I mean, again, if they just...
They're scrappy.
Right.
I mean, they've got a shot. I think that's what's fun about the league this year is a lot of these teams that are historically, and even some of them who still are, they're coming at you with like, this, what kind of matchup is this? I don't want to watch this game. And all of a sudden you're shocked. Like the Bengals game this weekend was absolutely bonkers. I'm going to lose my fantasy matchup against an idle team, because they had Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow, who got 49 points apiece. So it is a wild season.
I mean, that probably.
Where did Kirk Cousins come from all of a sudden with 5 touchdowns, 500 yards?
I mean, again, Atlanta, Tampa Bay, you're sitting there thinking Thursday night, well, I mean, I can watch it. It's football. But you weren't sitting there like you might be this Thursday if it's Niners Seahawks. What time does that start? I don't want to. But Atlanta, Tampa Bay, apparently, I mean, and I didn't watch it. I'm guilty of it. I was doing whatever. But apparently it was back and forth, high scoring. Like it just.
It was really good. Right. It was such an incredible game.
Right.
And, I historically used to be like, I'm going to watch 2 teams. I'm going to watch the Rams. I'm going to watch the Packers because, I always watch the Packers. But, like, if the Rams were playing at a different time of day, Kurt Warner, I had to watch. It was the greatest show on turf. Those games were amazing.
Exactly.
But, and then the Jets are my second favorite team, but I rarely got them back in the day because we didn't have NFL ticket. But like now that I have access to all these teams, I think about something that it's so funny because, I didn't like him much as a player, Tony Romo. I love him on commentary.
Sure.
And he just has some real amazing insight. And when he said during the game, like, now that I'm doing this, I'm a fan of all teams because you meet these guys and you like them and you're really rooting for them. So you kind of find that you've got sort of favorites all around the league. And it's hard to say, well, this is my favorite team. Well, no, I like all these guys.
Right.
Now that I'm still Packers number 1, but like I think about all these teams, like I really enjoy watching, Chargers games. I don't know why. Like, it's just they're an interesting team to watch. You don't see them much, so when you get a chance to flip over because there's nothing else, you're watching some boring game between the Bears and whomever, and it's all field goals and defensive. Like, I'm not John Madden. I'm not here for defensive football games. I'll flip over to a Chargers-Broncos game like we got next week. That's probably going to be a decent game to watch.
Right.
Is it going to be something to write home about? No, but it'll be good. And there's a lot of like just interesting storylines around the league. I think about Tampa Bay. They're getting hit with back-to-back hurricanes, and heaven help them down there because it's been rough. But, their team's doing all right with Baker Mayfield. And I like Baker. I think he's a good guy. I think he's gotten kind of a rough shot around the league. You know, I hate what they did to him in Cleveland. I always felt bad about that. It was a mistake for their franchise, and I think that's borne fruit. But he's in a great place now where he seems to really enjoy being there. And sometimes when you see those folks that you've gotten to know through seeing them on TV or their interviews and stuff, it just makes it more enjoyable to watch. I still don't like Joe Burrow. I think he's kind of a turd. I'm sorry, but the whole stogie in the locker room thing ruined it for me. Like, right. I'm just like, nah, man, get out of here. That's not healthy. Get out of here. Kids are watching this, you know. And he's just a greaseball. I don't like the guy. So I really can't root for the Bengals, but I do like Jamar Chase. So, you know, and AJ Green was a big favorite of mine for fantasy. Drafted him every year for years. So, you know, it's nice. You know, we may cut the cheese, we may poke the bear, we may roast the Niner here, but we really do just love football. And that's, you know, I love that Tony Romo brought that up because I think all the best announcers, the ones we grew up with, you know, whether you were watching Frank Gifford back in the day or, you know, Al Michaels and John Madden or Pat Summerall and John Madden, or if you're growing up right now on Tony Romo and Chris Collinsworth and Bryant Gumbel. Wait, Bryant Gumbel? Greg Gumbel. No? Greg Gumbel to Gumbel?
Gumbel to Gumbel.
Greg Gumbel. You know, if you're watching those guys call ball now, it's a cultural thing. And it's so cool to see, like, these teams that I remember growing up not being relevant, getting some stage time. Pretty cool. That being said, I really hope the Packers win the Super Bowl this year. It's a long shot, but well, since Eric is not here, excuse me, Lord Uther, is not here to tout his Chicago Bears, we're going to call some scores. And I think E would take the Bears at home against the Jags. I think that's a safe bet. I think it's a close game. I think they pulled out a couple of nice wins. This one's going to be close for comfort. We're gonna say that Lord Uther is calling this one by a margin of a field goal. Not sure what the score will be, but a margin of a field goal. Gold Rush, how about your Niners against the Hawks?
Well, short week. Division game doesn't really describe it. When Pete Carroll was stalking the sidelines, the Niners for years had trouble playing that team, home or away. Lumen Field, I mean, the 13th man, we've heard the cliches. I mean, it's loud. It's not as bad as Dodgers fans, how they handled the Padres in Game 2 of the NLDS, but it's loud and obnoxious and so forth. It's a tough place to go in and win, which made the Giants' performance yesterday all the more impressive. The super fan in me says, you know, our noses are out of joint, and we bounce back and get our first division win of the season to at least get back to a respectable 3-3, you know, with 2 tough games after that, running a gauntlet here. But, I mean, if Seattle plays like they've been playing against, you know, prior opponents, and especially their noses are out of joint, they just didn't really show up at home. They may have been looking ahead as well. They've got stuff to play for too. I'm going to take the Niners as my super fan, obviously. But this game is going to be brass knuckles and, you know, blood on the turf. And I wouldn't be surprised if we're looking at if the Niners can keep the Seattle offense in second gear, maybe 27-21 Niners.
I tend to agree. I think it's going to be a slobber knocker. I can't wait to see it on Thursday. I don't often look forward to Thursday night football. It's a weird time of the week. You can't stay up too late and, you know, all of that because you got to work Friday. But I'm going to watch that game. I'm going to enjoy myself. That is a marquee matchup for Thursday. Packers Cards, noon on Sunday. I think it's going to be a really solid game. On both sides of the ball. I think we're in for a back and forth probably early on. I think we might take command third quarter again, and then it's going to be a hang on through the fourth. That seems to be our formula this year. I don't think it's going to be close, though. I think we're going to win by 11 or more points. So I'm going to go with a 34-21 over. And I know the last time I called 34 anything, I got totally flipped the script on. But 34-21 over the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals suffer an injury in Lambeau.
Interesting.
I think Kyler Murray or one of his linemen go down. Nothing bad, just enough to knock him out of the game. Nobody's fault. I think it's going to be turf related. I don't think Arizona plays well in Green Bay.
Right.
It's just, I got a gut shot feeling. Let's pick one of the crap games for the week.
Yes. Game of the week.
I'm gonna say
WEAK.
yes. The game of the week. WEAK. Browns Eagles. I don't think anybody's asking for this matchup. And it's funny, on the NFL schedule on Google, it's directly across from Texans Patriots, which is equally who cares. Let's pick them both. We got the time.
Okay.
Who you got for Browns Eagles?
Well, I mean, the Eagles are schizophrenic. I mean, as much trouble, early season trouble, as the Niners have been fending off, those were two very winnable games. And so we could easily be talking about a team that's 4-1 versus 2-3. The Eagles, after, barely beating the Packers, or, not seemingly, in terms of the eye test in Brazil, they've, Tampa Bay absolutely shellacked them a couple of weeks ago. I mean, the Baker Mayfield. And, I mean, I know Tampa Bay's okay, but they're not that good, or the Eagles aren't that bad. I'll take the Eagles. I'll take Jalen Hurts and that squad. I think Cleveland is just spinning its wheels at this point. I mean, the Browns, ever since coming back into the league, really have not found the lightning in a bottle. The consistency. They've won games. They've even made the postseason, but they have not found a winning, consistent formula. So let's go Eagles. Eagles are good for 24. The Browns, as currently constructed, they might be 13. So let's go 24-13 there. And then you said Texans at New England. See, New England is not very good, as the Niners will tell you. They beat them 30-13. But again, coming out of Belichick, a couple of years removed from Brady, they still want to rediscover the Patriot way. So I think even as they lose, there's just this hope that maybe these seeds will germinate, and maybe they'll get something, to spring up and so forth, and maybe hit on the draft in a couple of drafts. Get a free agent signing or a trade or something to really kind of juice them up. Houston, I think, is playing with high expectations based on how they did last year. They've, again, not quite looked the part yet. They've won games. They've also looked a little shaky on offense and defense. I'll take the Texans because I don't think the Patriots have too much in the tank overall this season. But Houston, I mean, you're no longer a laughing stock. Like, people expect you to go out there and compete and win, kind of like Jacksonville a couple of years ago. So, I mean, we'll see if they can withstand that weekly social media and talk radio and, NFL show, daily ESPN Inside the NFL pressure. What's wrong with the Texans? So, but I'll take Texans 26-19.
Good pick. Yeah, I've got Eagles over the Browns. I think 24-13. I was going to say 24-9, but 13 is probably more realistic. I think that I'll go with that score as well. I'm going to take the Patriots at home over the Texans. I'm pretty sure C.J. Stroud is going to be out. I think he's hurt.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so I'm going to take them, and I think it's not even going to be close. I think the Patriots have a monster game over the Texans, and I think it's a blowout. I'm going to go 34. I'm going to go 34-14.
Nice.
Patriots over the Texans.
Okay.
I think the Texans come in woefully unprepared with no backup really in place and rely heavily on a running game that's going to get beaten badly by the Patriots defensive line and right end, especially. Watch that right end. Who it is, I have no idea, but I feel like they're going to blitz off the right side and be successful with it because, I played a lot of Madden. With that, NFL fans, make sure you subscribe to us here at Pending Rebrand so you can cut the cheese, poke the bear, roast the Niner, or celebrate your own favorite team right here in the comments. We respond to everybody. Doesn't matter who you are. Maybe you're even a bot. We don't shame here. But until next week, are you ready for more football?
I'm ready.